Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Here in this video, I will share with you all of your Tesla stock breaking news. There's actually not much of it, but we do have some comments out from Trump. And the big catalyst I've been waiting for over this weekend still has not happened. That is a pause on China tariffs. Although it sounds like we're still heading in that direction, Trump is not acting quickly to get this done, in which we kind of need to. So we will discuss that in this video, as well as your big catalyst of this upcoming week. You have a ton of earnings, you have the Fed and other data sets. And I do think it's going to be a volatile week following 9 straight green days in a row on the S&P. I actually think the markets could go even higher. Before we go ahead and get into all of this information, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and let's get started. Now, Czechia, I think that's how it's said, in Europe, just dropped a new law on autonomous vehicles, effectively allowing FSD supervised in Europe from January 2026. The new law says, quote, if the car's driving itself, the human is not responsible unless they ignore a takeover request, which this is the essentially Czech Republic. Tesla engineer said on Fox News that he works at Tesla for the innovation, for AI and robotics. And let me tell you right now, if I was somebody in college going to school, to work in the field of AI or robotics, I would get a job at Tesla. I would not stop until I got a job at Tesla. But hey, that's just what I would do. Now, in the news today, Netanyahu says that Israel will act against the Houthis after they fired a missile directly at Israel. Now, Trump had an ABC interview. The reporter asked, so your message to those small businesses who are saying we can't live 2 months with these tariffs, Apple got a big deal. Is there something for them? Trump says not only Apple, we have $7 to $8 trillion being invested in our country. Everything is going to be just fine. And I think that's because Trump already plans on pausing the China tariffs. Everything's going to be just fine. He knows everything will not be just fine if he does not pause the China tariffs. He knows that. Come on now. He's not a stupid person. Okay? So, yeah. Take that for what you will. Trump says that he won't replace Powell before his term as chair of Federal Reserve ends in 2026. So that's great news. Donald Trump reiterates the Fed should lower interest rates. And he says that U.S. small businesses will not need relief. Okay, so again, he's going to pause the China tariffs anytime. Donald Trump says Canada does not carry their full share of military spending. Donald Trump says that Vance and Rubio are potential successors to him. And Trump is keeping the option open to make some tariffs permanent. Donald Trump on the TikTok ban says that he would like to get a deal done with China, but would provide an extension if necessary. A reporter asked Scott Besson, said the Chinese continue to say that the U.S. and China are not engaged in any consultation or negotiation on tariffs. Can you clarify? Besson says we're not going to talk about who is talking to whom. It was reported on Friday that China was willing to essentially talk about fentanyl, like cracking down on fentanyl, to start negotiations. And that seemed very promising. And then China came out and said, hey, we need some kind of good faith move from the Trump administration to show that they are actually serious about negotiating, because they started this, and that essentially just means pause the tariffs. You pause the tariffs, then we negotiate. Okay? That's what China's waiting for, and that's what I'm waiting for. That's what we're all waiting for from Trump. China lauds upbeat comments from China in this NBC interview. Trump says that he is planning to decrease China tariffs in the future. Okay? That's a good sounding. Both of those headlines sound really good. Question is, when do we get the pause, Trump? This week, we are going to have a ton of earnings. So tomorrow morning, you get Recursion, you get onsemi, BioNTech, Tyson, some others. In after hours tomorrow, you get Palantir, Hims and Hers, Ford, Realty Income, Bell Ring, Clorox. Tuesday, you get Celsius, Datadog, Ferrari, DigitalOcean, Marriott, Constellation, Array Technologies, and Global Payments in the morning. In after hours, Supermicro, even though they pre-reported, the official numbers will come out Tuesday and after hours. AMD, Rivian, Tempest, Energy Transfer, Arista, Astra Labs, Upstart, Win, and Lucid. Wednesday pre-market, Uber, Walt Disney, Novo Nordisk, Teva, Unity, Vistra Energy, Barrick, Flex, Oscar, and Bunge. Wednesday and after hours, AppLovin, Carvana, ARM, Cleveland Cliffs, Axon, DoorDash, Dutch Bros, Oxy, and Catalyst. Thursday pre-market, Peloton. Didn't even know they were still in business. Didn't they go bankrupt? I don't know. They were close. Shopify, ConocoPhillips, D-Wave, HUD 8, Kronos, Warner Bros, Discovery, Crocs. Thursday and after hours, The Trade Desk, Coinbase, Mercado Libre, Marathon Digital, Cloudflare, SoundHound, DraftKings, Affirm, Wolfspeed, and InnoData. And then Friday morning, TerraWolf and Enbridge, couple other lesser known companies there. So really this week, it's like AI, retail stocks like, Palantir, AI as well grouped in there, Hims and Hers, right? A lot of software names, right? AppLovin, Datadog, again, Palantir, Tempest, another big AI name. So specific sectors are going to be important this week. Like these earnings are not going to move the broader markets necessarily. AMD, maybe, some of the chip stuff on semi, maybe could boost the chips as well. ARM, maybe that helps boost the chips because we still have NVIDIA earnings that have to come out over the next couple of weeks. But specific sectors will move a lot from these earnings, okay? So it's really a sector by sector kind of week, not necessarily like a broader, S&P moving week for earnings. We will get that when NVIDIA reports again in the next couple of weeks. Now, starting off tomorrow morning, we have S&P Global Composite PMI, final numbers for April, and services PMIs for April. And then you get ISM services PMIs. This is the Purchasing Managers Index. So it is soft data, but Wall Street tends to pay attention to it. So headline ISM is expected at 50.6. Last month was 50.8. So you're expecting it's going to get a little bit worse. Business activity expected to fall about 3 points. Services employment expected to actually rise. New orders expected to fall about 1 point. And prices are expected to rise. If prices fall, which I'm sure they probably won't with tariffs, right? If they do fall, that's a great thing. Overall, you want to see these numbers come in as high as possible besides services. Okay, services can come in, or prices can come in as low as you want with all of the other components, going up would be a great sign. Higher activity with less inflation. Now, on Tuesday, you will get the balance of trade for March. This will be important because it will feed into GDP. Exports and imports, again, will feed into GDP. So depending on how those numbers are, it will kind of tweak the Q1 GDP numbers. Last week, it was reported that we contracted 0.3%, okay? Based on some of this data coming out, it may show maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought. Maybe there's going to be an upwards revision to GDP. Vice versa, if the numbers are not great, there's going to be a downside revision, and it's going to get even more negative. Now, at 9 o'clock in the morning as well on Tuesday, RCM/TIPP Economic Optimism Index, expecting that to get a little bit better. And then you do have a 10-year bond auction at 1 p.m. On Wednesday is going to be really the big day. Fed Jerome Powell, we're not expecting the Fed to do much, not really expecting the Fed to say much, okay? Not a lot has changed, okay? Now, if Trump pauses the tariffs on China, then I think the Fed will take a more dovish approach. An approach like, hey, if the tariffs are not as big as we think they are, if trade deals get done, they're going to be able to cut rates more, okay? If not, we're going to get kind of the same old Powell, which I think is a mistake because, again, if we're not getting goods out of China and there's a lack of products on shelves and that causes inflation, there's nothing the Fed can do about that. Okay, minimizing the economic damage would probably be the best route here. I'm not the Fed. Apparently, they don't agree with that. So we're not expecting much of a change. That does set you up for a big catalyst. Because why? If we're not expecting anything to change and something does change for the better or for the worst, well, that turns into a big catalyst. Okay, so surprisingly enough to say this out loud for some people to hear this, I actually think people's expectation of the Fed being a non-event on Wednesday actually makes it an event when we get new information. If we get new information, if there's a new shift from Powell, something along those lines, okay? So be on the lookout for that. 2 p.m., the report comes out. 2:30 p.m. as always, Powell comes out and gives us that speech and takes questions. The speech is the actual event. The presser, not really much of an event. Now, we do get consumer credit change for March as well, expecting that to be positive almost 10 billion. Last month was negative almost 1 billion, which I actually think that's kind of important to watch in this environment. Initial jobless claims will come out Thursday, expecting 235,000. Unit labor costs, non-farm productivity quarter over quarter, preliminary data for Q1, continuing jobless claims, wholesale inventories, which will feed into, again, GDP. That is for the month of March. All of that data comes out in the morning before the bell. And then nothing else throughout the day on Thursday. On Friday, a speech from Fed Williams and Fed Barr at about 6 o'clock in the morning. Some unemployment rates out of Canada, Fed Kugler, Fed Goolsbee, Fed Waller, Fed Williams, Fed Cook, Fed Hammock, and Fed Musolium will all speak on Friday. So a bunch of Fed speakers, again, depending on how Wednesday goes, that may or may not be a catalyst for markets. Now, I'm optimistic by Friday you're going to have a pause on China tariffs. I think we're going to get overall headline tariff news, good or bad, in this week. And that is what is also going to help drive markets. If we get a pause on China tariffs, I think markets are going to explode higher from here, right? I think we're going to have a great week. If we don't get that, then you're kind of starting to come down to the wire, right? You're kind of starting to get to a bad place if we don't get a pause on China tariffs. Like every day we don't get a pause, it creates more economic damage, okay? That's a fact. So whole time markets are going up, more damage is being done. There will be a reckoning of that if there is no pause on China tariffs. Don't know exactly when that's going to happen. Don't know exactly what day that's going to be, but eventually that will happen. So we want to be on the lookout for that. Again, same is true with Tesla. I think things look good. I think, people are still overly negative on Tesla. I think a lot of things are going right. Pretty much everything. Now, the earnings have been pretty rough, okay? But I do think with a pause on China tariffs, things can really start looking better for Tesla. And I think you get a larger rally in that event into the mid 300s. But again, don't know when that's going to happen. I think at this point, really just a matter of when, not if. So does it happen this week? I'm optimistic. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic rest of your day. And I will see you in the next one.